Developing right now on Morning News Now, a summer of storms rolling on and wreaking havoc across America.
There it is. Okay, we've got a tornado. We got a tornado.
This morning, parts of the Midwest left devastated by this string of reported tornadoes, while in the South, millions of people are bracing for heavy downpours and flash flooding. We're tracking the system, the dangers, and the areas most at risk. In Washington, mixed messages from President Trump over the future of Fed Chair Jerome Powell. And developing overnight, the president's plan to cut $9 billion in federal funding, now closer to reality, threatening already approved funding for public radio and TV. We'll bring you the latest. Plus, growing fallout over the Trump administration's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case as the president lashes out against members of his own party.
It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net. They're wasting their time with a guy who obviously had some very serious problems, who died 3-4 years ago.
Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi facing mounting pressure to release the files. We'll bring you the latest. And a new chapter for public libraries as the demand for ebooks soars. Why downloading digitally actually costs more and could open up legal problems for publishers, authors, and readers alike. Good morning. Thanks so much for starting your Thursday with us. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is off this morning. We're going to begin with those severe summer storms that we are continuing to track across the country. In the Midwest, people are cleaning up toppled trees and debris this morning after at least 5 tornadoes tore through southern Wisconsin yesterday. Take a look at this.
I got a tornado right in front of me. Tornado right in front of me. Right here, right here. Tornado on the ground. Tornado on the ground. Holy I got it.
As you can hear, though, these massive twisters stunned storm chasers. Meanwhile, in the Northeast, 1 man died and 13 others, it includes kids, were injured yesterday after they were struck by lightning. It happened during a Cub Scout event at an archery range in New Jersey. Well, the severe storm risk is slightly lower today, but we are still watching out for heavy rainfall, in fact, up to 10 inches, and that could trigger flash flooding in states along the Gulf Coast. We, of course, have Angie Lassman here tracking it all for us, but first, let's go to NBC News correspondent George Solis. He's in New Orleans, which is being threatened by a tropical storm. George, good morning.
The rain here in New Orleans and surrounding region expected to come in waves. Now, this system isn't expected to develop into a tropical storm or depression, but it's still expected to bring a lot of tropical moisture. And what that means, intense rainfall and the potential for some flooding. Now, some areas in Louisiana and around the region could see up to 10 inches. So residents here, of course, on high alert. What we've seen are a number of businesses putting sandbags out in front of their businesses. We saw a number of people also collecting sandbags from a number of regions around New Orleans and surrounding parishes, regions here. People not taking any chances. Outside of that, this storm expected again to be a downpour. It could move very fast. A lot of folks keeping their eye on the forecast. Elsewhere in other parts of the country, tragedy struck. 1 man dead, more than a dozen injured after a lightning strike in New Jersey. We're getting more information about that particular incident right now. Unfortunately, some more details looking to be forthcoming here in the next several hours. The other big headline today is that intense heat. More than 70 million people under those heat alerts. So hydration, staying indoors as much as possible. And of course, we cannot talk about weather without some of those severe twisters that we've been seeing ramp up, particularly around the Midwest. We saw some yesterday, some of those images completely harrowing of those twisters just ripping through the sky across several towns. Some more assessment of those tornadoes expected today. But back here in Louisiana, again, the storm here set to make landfall, if you will, in the next several hours. We're looking at, again, some rain starting to fall now. And again, it's supposed to ramp up here throughout the day. Again, as much as 10 inches in some regions, and folks here definitely bracing for whatever this storm brings. Back to you.
All right, George, thank you. Well, let's get to meteorologist Angie Lassman. She is tracking that tropical disturbance along the Gulf Coast for us this morning. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi there, Savannah. Good morning to you. George got it right when he said that we're going to see some heavy rainfall and the potential for flash flooding here in the coming days. It's not just a today problem along the Gulf Coast. It's going to be multiple days of this, so ample amounts of rain are on the way. Here's the lay of the land of what we're dealing with right now. The system really can't get its act together. We're talking about just a 30% chance of any development. So right now we're looking at it to be fairly unlikely likely for this to develop into a tropical depression or anything beyond that. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be impactful when it comes to the weather that it brings across this region. Here's what we're looking at and how it times out as we get through the day today. Notice some of those showers that are focused across essentially the panhandle of Florida back to the west over Louisiana. Louisiana is where we'll see some of that heaviest rain. It looks like this system will kind of stay spinning right near that central Gulf Coast. So that's where most of the heaviest of the rain will be. And then tomorrow, more of the same, again, across that same region. Galveston, Texas, back to the east towards Pensacola is where we'll see the potential for flooding with additional rainfall on the way here, even as we get into tomorrow. By the time we get through the weekend, specifically Saturday, it looks like we'll pick up a good dose of rain across this area. So I think more widespread amounts, an inch, 2 inches, 3, maybe up to 5 inches. But there's going to be some localized spots, especially the closer you get to the coast, where we could see anywhere from 10 to 15 inches of rain. So really concerned about the flash flooding across that region over multiple days heading into the weekend. Bigger picture look, we've got a cold front that we're tracking across the east and the northern tier of the country. Scattered showers today from Ohio Valley all the way to New England. We'll see kind of a lower threat of severe weather, but some gusty winds, some heavy rainfall on the table once again across that area. And then tomorrow, we'll see some of those showers and thunderstorms focused across the southeast and more of that rain across parts of the Midwest. When it's all said and done, an inch or 2 across this region. Not quite as concerned, Savannah, about the flash flooding in this area, but of course, multiple days of rain on the way along the Gulf Coast.
All right, Angie, thank you so much. So much going on. Now let's turn to the White House. President Trump is now downplaying reports that he's been planning to fire the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. So markets initially dropped. This was yesterday after a White House official said the president would likely soon fire Powell. And this was after he received support for that move from GOP lawmakers following a meeting on Tuesday. They said he asked them about it. What do you think? Should I fire him? They all said yes. Well, markets then rebounded after Mr. Trump, who's, of course, long criticized Powell for not cutting interest rates, denied that he was planning to oust the Fed chair. Take a listen to what the president said in the Oval Office yesterday.
He's always been too late, hence his nickname, Too Late. He should have cut interest rates a long time ago. We're not planning on doing anything. We're very concerned. I don't rule out anything, but I think it's highly unlikely unless he has to leave for fraud. I mean, it's possible there's fraud involved with the $2.7 billion renovation.
Well, here with more is NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard and Investopedia's editor-in-chief, our friend Caleb Silver. Good morning to both of you. Vaughn, I will start with you. We're going to get into that whole notion there of fraud and the renovation in just a moment. But first, let's talk about how this all unfolded. From that meeting I mentioned where the president sort of sourced opinions on if he should fire him to then these comments saying it's not happening. Is the door still open to fire Powell? What do you think?
Right. This is something that the president has floated now for months. His ire for Jerome Powell has only increased with the passing of time, with the Fed refusing to largely lower interest rates. And that is what has led the president to go behind closed doors with Republican lawmakers back on Tuesday afternoon and tell them that he was considering firing the Fed chair. But that's when, less than 24 hours after that, you heard there from the president directly saying that it's highly unlikely that he will. That said, there's a Republican Florida lawmaker who was in the meeting there with the president who said that she was told that it was 99% imminent that he was going to go through with this here. So there's a lot of back and forth between the president, will he or will he not? But if he were to do this, the stakes of it would be sky high.
Caleb, let's bring you in here and just talk through why the president wants this potentially. Like he's said verbally so many times how he wants him to lower those interest rates. Of course, that has not actually happened. You have told us that you're not predicting it will happen. Why is it that he wants that? Why is it that the Fed won't do it?
Yeah, two reasons. One, lower interest rates means cheaper money, means more spending by consumers and by businesses. More spending could stimulate the economy, probably more record highs for the stock market. But the real reason is because of the interest we pay on our national debt, which is some $888 billion. A lot of that is due to high interest rates. If interest rates were lower, those payments would be lower. That would free up more money for the Trump administration to pursue whatever they want with that money, spend it on the anti-immigration policies, potentially offset some of the impact of the tariffs that that are supposed to come into place August 1st. So those are the key reasons.
And sort of a political win, right? Like everybody feels like, oh, my mortgage might go down, kind of a thing under this president.
Right. The flip side of that is you get higher inflation when you lower interest rates because we spend a lot more and that drives prices higher. That could actually slow the economy because we'll tap out if prices rise again.
Vaughn, let's talk now about this renovation that keeps coming up. So we heard it there in that sound that we played, and there was a lot more of it in this press conference from the Oval Office yesterday of the president criticizing this planned $2.5 billion building renovation project, saying, they don't need parks on the ceilings of buildings, things like that. Is this considered controversial? And also, specifically the fact that he used that word fraud yesterday was kind of throwing something new in there, I think, a little bit, where it's like this potential, if he wants to, there could be cause to potentially fire the Fed chair. Tell us about this.
Right. Number one, the Fed denies that their construction project of their Washington headquarters is going and ultimately building things like garden rooftop terraces or having new slabs of marble throughout it or a VIP dining room. They deny what the White House is claiming as a part of this construction project. But there's a legal question as to whether the president can actually fire the Fed chair. Just this spring, the Supreme Court suggested that the president did not have the power at will to fire Jerome Powell. And so that is where you were seeing sort of a pretext being laid by Russ Vought, his OMB director here at the White House, but also the president himself, suggesting there may be fraud through this construction project, because Jerome Powell has specifically said on 2 occasions that if the president were to try to fire him or ask him to step aside, he would be specific and respond no here. And so this is where this gets at the legal heart of this, of whether the president, even if he wants to, before his term ends in May of 2026, Jerome Powell's term ends next year, whether he even has the ability to go through with such a move as this.
Caleb, we did see briefly markets react negatively when these reports were surfacing, which was pretty close to then when we heard from the president saying, I'm not planning to do this imminently. What could happen if he follows through with it? How do you see markets reacting? What's that mean for everybody at home?
It's just another erosion of trust in the system here, because the Fed is independent, has been that way since the Federal Reserve Act of 1914. You want them independent because monetary policy is something very delicate. If the president is imposing tariffs, if we're doing more government spending, we need an independent body to make sure that we don't have sky-high inflation again like we did a few years ago. Also, we've never had a president fire a Fed chair before, and it's not as if Fed Chair Jerome Powell makes these decisions on interest rates himself. There is a committee of Fed governors, the FOMC, that makes this decision. So if he fires him, you'll get a lawsuit probably by Powell. That'll go on for months. The vice chair would be appointed, but that still doesn't guarantee lower interest rates. So this could be very messy for quite a while. The next meeting, of course, in 13 days, 5 hours and 40 minutes. I will be there for that meeting because it's going to be really interesting.
Oh, I wasn't even expecting a countdown clock today. Caleb, thank you. Vaughn, thank you. Covering a lot for us. Well, in a dramatic reversal, President Trump is now slamming some of his own supporters who have called for the release of files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Yesterday on social media, the president called the whole thing a hoax. And this all comes after the Justice Department published a memo earlier this month stating there was no evidence of a, quote, incriminating client list. NBC News correspondent Alice Barr has the latest from Washington.
As a rare rift divides MAGA world over the Jeffrey Epstein case, President Trump growing increasingly frustrated with some of his own supporters.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net.
In a lengthy post on social media, disowning supporters he called weaklings for buying into what he terms BS. But while the president blames Democrats, right-wing influencers and some members of his own administration were among the loudest voices perpetuating conspiracy theories, believing that Epstein, who was charged and died by suicide in jail during the first Trump term, did not kill himself and that he left an incriminating client list. Here's FBI Director Kash Patel 2 years ago.
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are.
President Trump made a campaign promise to release the Epstein files, but last week the Justice Department and FBI contradicted the swirling conspiracies and said they would not release more evidence. Attorney General Pam Bondi has been taking the heat from angered MAGA allies, with some now directed at the president himself.
If you talk about this, I'm going to excommunicate you. Well, you're not the Pope, bro.
Some Republican lawmakers calling for more disclosures.
The Epstein files need to be released.
I would say make it all public.
As President Trump stands by his attorney general.
She says, I gave you all the credible information.
And presses his base to move on.
Multiple federal law enforcement officials tell NBC News the memo reaffirming Epstein was not murdered behind bars and that he did not keep a client list accurately describes the investigation's findings. President Trump says if the attorney general does find more credible information, she should release it. Savannah?
All right, Alice, thank you so much. Well, as she just mentioned, President Trump has forcefully dismissed this recent interest in the Epstein case when he's tried to distance himself from Epstein. But 3 decades ago, the two were members of the same social circles in Florida. News Now anchor Hallie Jackson takes a look back at their history together.
President Trump dismissing the interest now in the Epstein case.
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff.
And distancing himself from the convicted sex offender, as the president's been doing for years.
I had a falling out with him a long time ago.
In the Oval Office in 2019, making clear his feelings on Epstein at that point.
I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan.
There's no evidence the president is connected to any of Epstein's crimes. We do know the two did have a relationship. The president acknowledging both men crossed paths in Palm Beach back in the 90s. NBC News archival video from 1992 shows the president with Epstein at a Mar-a-Lago party alongside cheerleaders for the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. Mr. Trump greeting guests, including Epstein.
Come on in. Go inside.
The two chatting and gesturing to those in front of them. At one point, it appears Mr. Trump leans over and tells Epstein she's hot. The video, taken more than a decade before Epstein's plea deal, which made him register as a sex offender in Florida. Between 1993 and 1997, flight logs, released in the trial of Epstein's now convicted associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, show Mr. Trump flew on Epstein's plane multiple times. In 2002, Mr. Trump told New York Magazine, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with." Adding, it is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. Epstein claiming to author Michael Wolff in 2017 that the two men were at one time very close.
That was close to straight.
There's no other evidence they were that friendly, and the two ended up having a falling out in 2004, according to people who spoke with the Washington Post, over competition for an oceanfront property in Florida. The president has confirmed the friendship ended, though he didn't specify why.
The reason doesn't make any difference, frankly.
Of course, President Trump is not the only powerful person who spent time with Epstein. Former President Bill Clinton, former VP Al Gore, Bill Gates, all named in court documents as being connected to Epstein. There's been no evidence that any of these people, including President Trump, have been involved in Epstein's crimes, and they've denied any wrongdoing, all as the Epstein case is back in the spotlight.
I don't understand why it keeps going. I think really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say let them have it.
Our thanks to Hallie Jackson for that report. Now we head to Capitol Hill, where the Senate worked overnight to approve $9.4 billion in spending cuts requested by President Trump. The final vote was 51-48, with 2 Republicans opposing the measure. That was Senator Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. This vote brings President Trump one step closer to having his Department of Government Efficiency cuts approved by Congress. NBC News correspondent, Capitol Hill correspondent, I should say, Julie Sirkin joins us from Washington with more on this. Hey, Julie, good morning. So what more can you tell us about this overnight vote, the cuts that are in this bill, and what I just mentioned there, sort of like the approval from DOJ, since we already saw so much of that happen?
Yeah, I think, Savannah, senators are unfortunately getting used to pulling all-nighters and voting overnight, because we've seen this trend over the last couple of months as they tried to pass the president's key agenda items. And this was certainly high on the list for the president. This is a rare move for Congress to make, because essentially what they're doing in passing this $9 billion rescissions package is giving back the funding they already appropriated. This is why you saw 2 Senate Republicans ultimately vote against this package, which would cut funding to foreign aid and also public broadcasting here back home. Senator Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski had concerns about those cuts, but also concerns about what precedent this would set in ceding power to the executive branch, even more power. The last time this happened was back in the 1990s when a president had signed a rescissions package. So a really rare move here happening overnight.
Julie, what happens next with this bill?
Well, it's going to head to the House. They could take it up as soon as today. Remember, the deadline to take this package up is actually Friday because of the procedural machinations of how this process works, given that it is so rare. You mentioned DOJ. Of course, that is a reason why they're trying to codify these spending cuts. $9 billion is really a drop in the bucket. And think about how difficult it is for them to put up the votes because, of course, Democrats are not voting for this, not helping Republicans out and get these packages passed. They wanted to target a lot more in cuts. You'll remember on the campaign trail, Elon Musk, back then when he was friendly with the president, was saying that they would cut close to $2 trillion. Obviously, that's not happening. They passed a multi-trillion-dollar package, Savannah, that adds money to the deficit. This is Republicans' attempts to begin to cut some of that spending. But again, just $9 billion and still kind of a long road ahead.
Julie, also, let's talk about what else we might see today in other news. The Senate Judiciary Committee is expected to vote on this series of nominations later this morning. There's obviously always stuff to talk about here, but there is this one that's sort of controversial, some back and forth here. Tell us what you're watching.
Yeah, Emil Bovee, he is somebody that the president nominated to be for a lifetime appointment on the Third Circuit of Appeals. And he is controversial, Savannah, because of comments he's made in the past. He's the principal deputy attorney general for the Trump administration already. He was a lawyer for him. And he had suggested, according to whistleblowers that Democrats had tried to bring forward to stop this process. According to that whistleblower, he suggested that perhaps the Trump administration should defy court orders, specifically when it comes to the court ruling where they tried to counter the administration's efforts in deporting migrants to foreign countries where they have no relations to in some cases. Of course, we saw that play out so publicly with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Democrats trying to stop this from going through, but it does sound like it will be successful. The Judiciary Committee is meeting this morning to process that nomination to the full floor for a vote. Tom Tillis, who was kind of that last holdout that we were watching, said yesterday he would vote for him. So it does seem like he is on a glide path to confirmation here, Savannah.
All right, Julie Sirkin, thank you so much. Well, now to a devastating story out of Arizona that's gaining national attention this morning. The husband of a well-known TikTok influencer could face felony child abuse charges after their 3-year-old son drowned in the family's pool. NBC News correspondent Camila Bernal has the latest on the investigation.
I love you. It's a tragedy followed by millions that could soon be a criminal case. Social media influencer Emily Kaiser's son drowned in the family pool back in May.
And this is Trig.
Trig was just 3 years old. Emily often posting about him.
I'm so grateful for Trig, and I love him so much.
Police in Chandler, Arizona say they're recommending a felony child abuse charge against the boy's father, Brady Kaiser. At the time of the drowning, Emily wasn't home, according to a search warrant affidavit obtained by our Phoenix affiliate KPNX. Brady told police that after dinner, he saw Trig in the backyard playing near the pool. He said he was distracted by his infant son and added that he lost sight of Trig for approximately 3 to 5 minutes. The documents say the dad immediately jumped in, trying to save him, and called 911. Trig died at the hospital a few days later.
It rises to the level of criminal charges under the law when it's a negligent act, meaning that the parents are careless and they should have done something to prevent the death of their child.
Brady Kaiser could not be reached for comment, and Emily's attorney did not respond to our request for comment. But in a lawsuit attempting to seal the records related to Trig's death, her attorney called it a heartbreaking accidental drowning, adding Emily is going through a parent's worst nightmare.
Our thanks to Camila Bernal for that report. Well, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office says the case is under review, but told NBC there's no timeline for a charging decision. We have much more to come here on Morning News Now this morning. Later this hour, a shocking discovery in Southern California. 21 children, many born by surrogates, found by police during a child abuse investigation. The charges the parents now face. But up first, after the break, escalation in the Middle East. Israel launching a new wave of airstrikes on Syria. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Israel has launched a wave of airstrikes against Syria. Now, this is in an effort to protect the Druze. That's an ethnic and religious minority that Israel views as an ally. Druze and Syrian sectarian forces have been involved in deadly clashes for days in the southern part of Syria. The Syrian president said today protecting the Druze from sectarian violence is a, quote, priority. On Tuesday, the Israeli military hit the Syrian Defense Ministry in the heart of Damascus, as well as what it called a military target that was near the presidential palace. Well, the attack on Damascus marks a significant escalation by Israel against Syria's Islamist-led government and the first real test of the relative stability in that country. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us from Tel Aviv with more on this. Matt, good morning. So we're going to show some footage here. This is from Reuters. Syrian government forces were seen withdrawing from the city of Suwaida. This is after government officials and Druze minority leaders announced a renewed ceasefire yesterday. And I know I sort of just gave kind of like a history lesson about what's going on in this region, but tell us more about this. Give us some more detail. Help us understand where things stand this morning.
Yeah, and it was a great history lesson. I mean, you summed it up. But what we're hearing about this morning is that this seems to be holding, and that is a very tenuous thing, a very fragile ceasefire that has been imposed on southwestern Syria and the area around Suwaida. You mentioned that the regime had agreed to this, that a Druze leader who has his own militarized forces had agreed to this. But there was another rival leader of that Druze leader who agreed to the ceasefire, who last night vowed to continue fighting on until Syrian forces were ejected from southwest Syria. Now, whether or not he continues to intend to do so, it looks as though this ceasefire is holding despite his dissent. So, you know, that is a big question, but we have to watch this. This is not a sure thing. It looks as though this is a fragile ceasefire that could fray at any moment after hundreds of people have already been killed.
Matt, so let's talk about the U.S. involvement here. Relations between Syria and the U.S., they appeared to be warming following President Trump's visit to the Middle East. That was back in May. He met with the Syrian president in Saudi Arabia. But then Secretary of State Marco Rubio, this was just yesterday, he said we agreed on specific steps that will bring this troubling and horrifying situation to an end. Let's talk about that. Do we know what steps? What do we know about the U.S. trying to de-escalate this fighting and where U.S. relations stands on both sides of this?
I don't have any details from the backroom negotiations that were going on, and I don't even know if there were backroom negotiations that were going on. But I can tell you this. The U.S. is in a very unusually good position to negotiate between the Syrian regime and the Israelis, not just because the Israelis are longtime American allies, but because the Trump administration has made an extra effort to try to rehabilitate Ahmed al-Shara, who's the president of Syria after he unseated the former dictator late last year, Bashar al-Assad. So that means that they are in a good position to try to end this fighting. That might be what happened. But there were also Druze leaders who didn't want to see Israeli intervention, who wanted to negotiate with the regime, who wanted to end the fighting. And their voices may have prevailed before the U.S. even intervened. But it's important to note here, bringing in Ahmed al-Shara, the Syrian president, from the cold. He's a former jihadist. He was part of al-Qaeda. He had ties to Islamic State. Bringing him in from the cold is a priority of the Trump administration. And Israeli attacks against Syrian forces, that jeopardized that whole project.
Let's talk more about Israel. The Israeli defense minister is going to be in Washington today. The plan is to meet with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and other U.S. officials. What's on the agenda?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to cover a lot of what usually is discussed between two counterparts like this. Weapons provisions, mill-to-mill cooperation, as they call it, in Washington and in Foggy Bottom. But, you know, we're also going to be hearing probably from Pete Hegseth a little bit about Iran and the Gaza Strip. Pete Hegseth has been speaking openly about American attacks against Iran, about American attacks against the Houthis in Yemen. We haven't heard Pete Hegseth discuss in any open way the day after for the Gaza Strip, and that is a crucial question going forward. Who will be governing Gaza? What will be the U.S. role? What will be Israel's role? And crucially, whether or not Hamas will have anything to do with the future of the Gaza Strip, or whether it will go to the moribund Palestinian Authority that now governs the West Bank. So we're going to have to wait for a readout from this conversation. The fact is that Israel Katz had spoken in the past with major leaders from the administration. Pete Hegseth was not always there. He's been beset by scandals for the past several months. He wasn't always the guy the administration was putting forward.
All right, Matt Bradley, thank you very much. Well, in Canada, police in Vancouver are investigating what they call a hijacking after a suspect allegedly stole a small private plane. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has all the details on how that incident brought air traffic to a virtual stop at a critical Canadian airport.
On the runway at Vancouver International Airport, a small Cessna pursued by a line of police cars. Moments later, Royal Canadian Mounted Police trained their guns on and took into custody the pilot, the only one on board, who police say had hijacked the plane, forcing air traffic at this major West Coast airport to shut down.
We do have an aircraft that has been hijacked, is in the vicinity of the airport overflying.
For 40 minutes, commercial flights were forced to hold or circle, 9 diverted to other airports, including Seattle.
He came on and said, oh, there's no airspace, the airspace has been closed because of a ultralight plane that is not communicating with the tower.
The plane was allegedly stolen from a flying club at nearby Victoria, then flew low-altitude circles over Vancouver Airport.
Just in case anything starts heading towards you, you have the ability to move at your discretion.
The Canadian press says an air traffic control conversation suggests the suspect may have been motivated by some type of protest. In a statement, police say the plane landed safely at Vancouver and Richmond RCMP officers arrested the suspect without incident.
What the hell?
In 2018, a Seattle airport employee stole an empty passenger plane, performing aerobatics despite little pilot training.
I played video games before, so I know what I'm doing a little bit.
Richard Russell died after crashing the plane into a nearby island. No word on what charges the Canadian suspect might face. Meanwhile, Homeland Security Secretary Noem is talking about relaxing the TSA's liquids and gels rule after last week allowing passengers to keep their shoes on. Secretary Noem wants to make it easier on passengers if the technology allows it. You may recall the TSA's 3-ounce liquid rule came after an attempt to blow up a plane using liquid explosives. Many security experts are very concerned about relaxing the screening at TSA checkpoints, saying detection technology has not yet been put in place and terrorists remain focused on attacking the United States. Back to you.
Oh, all right, Tom, thank you very much. Well, coming up, outrage after a child abuse investigation leads to a shocking discovery.
What was your reaction when you learned they had 21 children?
I was a little bit hysterical, to say the least.
Up next, the latest on a case out of Southern California that's raising questions about surrogacy agencies in America. This is Morning News Now. We are back now with a shocking case unfolding in Southern California. Police removed 21 children, many born by surrogates, from this home and placed them into protective custody in what began as a child abuse investigation. Now, the parents have been arrested for child endangerment and neglect. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa has the story.
New details in an alarming child abuse investigation that led officers to discover 21 young children who lived inside this Southern California home. Many of 65-year-old Guo Jun Xuan and 38-year-old Sylvia Zhang's children had been born via surrogates, according to Arcadia Police.
This was my first experience being a surrogate.
Kayla Ann Elliott thought she was helping a couple have a second child.
What was your reaction when you learned they had 21 children?
I was a little bit hysterical, to say the least. You just don't expect that you're going to hand the baby over to their parents and then all of a sudden find out that there was abuse and neglect going on.
It all unraveled in May after a hospital contacted Arcadia Police to investigate the case of a 2-month-old who arrived with head injuries, prompting detectives to pull surveillance video, cell phones, and hard drives from the home.
We believe that the other children were also subject to physical and emotional abuse, and the nannies were the ones who were committing the physical and emotional abuse. However, the parents were well aware of what was going on.
While police are still searching for the nanny allegedly seen on camera shaking the hospitalized infant, the parents were arrested for felony child endangerment and neglect. They have since been released and have not responded to our requests for comment, as investigators zero in on the agency tied to their address, marked surrogacy, with the help of the FBI, according to Arcadia Police. Callie Fell is with the Center for Bioethics and Culture Network.
It's not illegal to have 20 children. It's not illegal to hire surrogate mothers. But certainly this should open up our eyes to the fact that we are allowing an industry to just do what it pleases.
Police say all of the children have been placed in protective custody. And while public records showed the business license for Mark's surrogacy was recently terminated, a pregnant surrogate tells me the agency continues to contact her. Back to you.
All right, Emily, thank you so much. Well, for more on this, let's bring in our friend, NBC News legal analyst, Angela Senadella. Angela, good morning. I think this is just such a head scratcher, so concerning to so many people. But we did just hear there, not illegal to have 20 plus kids, not illegal for surrogacy, but there is this patchwork of laws about surrogacy, state by state kind of. So is there anything in place that could prevent something like this from happening?
You're exactly right in that there's nothing like patently illegal about someone having 21 children via surrogacy. I mean, obviously in this country, there's no limit to the number of children you could have. Also in the state of California, surrogacy is really recognized as very legitimate so long as the contract was legal and was entered into knowingly by both parties with independent attorneys. But I want to note here that the reason why the children were removed really doesn't have anything to do with the surrogacy directly. It's about child abuse and neglect, and whether or not it is your own biological children or children you had via surrogacy, or for any reason, if there is neglect or abuse in the home, then investigators can remove them.
Right. Okay, this is also another really concerning and strange detail. The company involved in the surrogacy here of these kids is apparently registered to the couple's address in Arcadia. I mean, is it legal for someone to essentially operate a surrogacy company to broker those children, those adoptions for themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, it looks really weird on its face, but there's nothing patently illegal about doing it. That said, though, the parties who enter this contract have to know what's happening, right? That's also why all parties have to be represented by independent attorneys. That's part of surrogacy law in California. So if there was any fraud involved, and again, we don't really know because we haven't seen any of the contracts, then it's possible that there was something illegal about it. But you don't really have to disclose immediately that you own the agency. There's no law that requires that.
So you say if there's any fraud involved, like let's just take the woman who was in Emily's story there, who we just heard from, who was a surrogate mother, who handed off a child to these parents. The fact that they sort of represented themselves as a couple trying for their second child, is that fraud? And could that mean that there is something there that could help that woman get that child back, as she said she's interested in?
Right. So the determination of fraud would really come down to what was in the contract. But generally in these contracts, the most upfront issue is who has custody, right? So I'm going to guess that in these contracts, it's pretty clear that whoever carried this child does not have custodial rights to that child, that they relinquish them immediately. So even if there is fraud in a case like this, it's not likely that then the custody would go back to the mother who carried it or the woman who carried it. It would go to the state in a case like this, and the state would then determine who could be the next legal guardian.
Right, and in fact, we know, for example, that that child is in foster care now rather than back with this surrogate mother. Is there anything that you would recommend from a legal standpoint for surrogate mothers to protect themselves?
Yeah, so as the law requires, make sure you get an attorney who really knows what they're doing. You could also put into the contract, for example, that a background check is required for the parents who are going to be having the children. You could even ask for full disclosures in the contract of who are the parents and what their housing and living situation is like. So all of these things, like contract law, can be negotiated up front with a good attorney. You just have to make sure it's in the contract.
All right, Angela, so many questions on this one. As we get more information, we'll probably be talking to you again. Thank you so much. Well, coming up, sweet disposition. Coca-Cola now dodging a claim by President Trump that the company is switching back to cane sugar. We'll have the latest. Plus, a digital dilemma for public libraries, why a growing demand for ebooks could become the prologue for a new legal chapter for publishers and authors. We'll get you read in next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. In the last few years, the world of thoroughbred racing has tried to tackle the persistent problem of life-ending injuries to horses as a way to ensure the future of the sport. But this year's spring meet at the iconic Churchill Downs track in Kentucky saw an increase in the number of fatal injuries. The track reported, get this, 7 horse fatalities. That was just during May and June, and that is more than the total number from all of last year. Well, as you can imagine, these deaths leave an impression, of course, also on fans who turn out for a fun day at the track. Reporter David Mattingly from our NBC affiliate in Louisville has a look at the problem that haunts the sport.
It was a Friday in June when 28-year-old equestrian Kayla Centauri and her family checked one off the bucket list with a visit to Churchill Downs. But a fun day at the track instantly changed when a horse stumbled.
It was very obvious. It was a very catastrophic break in one of his front legs where it was just swinging.
And suddenly, cheers from Centauri's family turned to tears.
And I was too. I was sitting there crying because I love these animals so much. I have my own horse. It's traumatic seeing it happen in person.
That trauma was repeated 7 times for horses racing in Churchill Downs spring meet. Reviews and investigations have been launched into why the numbers went up over last year. Equine Medical Director William Farmer says the problem is not with the horses that reside and train at Churchill Downs. He attributes the increase to horses that travel from track to track.
And so when they come here to Churchill Downs, and that injury occurs, it may not necessarily be a fault or a reason of Churchill Downs racetrack, but just the timing of that in that horse's cycle.
Failure to prevent common fatal injuries adds fuel to arguments from horse racing critics, who point to the ongoing fatalities as evidence that horse deaths are unavoidable.
The fact that it was up in 23, down in 24, and now it looks like it's going back up, that really doesn't mean anything. There's a certain level of killing built into the industry.
Despite the spring increase in fatal injuries, HISA, the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, is expecting a return to the trend started with last year's low numbers.
Overall, we're seeing still the positive trend of keeping the numbers much lower than they were pre-HISA. But I do think we're going to see a slight uptick in the second quarter that I hope and expect will make up for in the third quarter.
But even if the sport recovers its safety momentum, it has lost a piece of its future. Kayla Centauri came to Churchill Downs as a fan. She left sad and conflicted.
But just seeing it in person and being there, it really changed it for me.
Our thanks to David Mattingly for that report. While racing returns to Churchill Downs with the fall meet beginning in September. Let's turn now to some money headlines for you. We're kicking things off with a Coke. We've got the latest on speculation from the White House about a possible sweet switch up at the soda giant. CNBC's Silvana Henao has that and some other money news. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah. Good morning to you. Well, President Trump says Coca-Cola has agreed to use real cane sugar, and that's following criticism of sweeteners such as high fructose corn syrup by Health Secretary RFK Jr. Now, a Coke spokesperson says the company appreciates the president's enthusiasm for the brand. He is a noted Diet Coke drinker. Now, she says more details on innovative offerings will be shared soon. U.S. Coke bottlers switched to corn syrup in the 1980s, and that was, of course, a cost-cutting move, but the company has long indulged fans of cane sugar by importing glass bottles of Mexican Coke. Returning to sugar in U.S. production, well, that could affect the nation's corn farmers. Meanwhile, Coinbase is moving further into the consumer market with an everything app that goes beyond trading. So this Base app replaces the Coinbase wallet and will combine wallet, trading, and payments, as well as social media, messaging, and support for mini apps. And the aim is to expand Coinbase's reach to a new category of consumers who aren't necessarily interested in buying or trading crypto, but could still benefit from that so-called on-chain economy. And TikTok will now let songwriters highlight tracks they've written or co-written directly on their profiles. So the list will live in the music tab on their profiles, and it's similar to what TikTok offers to artists. Now they'll also get a songwriter label right below their account name. And music is such a huge part of TikTok, with the platform boosting the popularity of songs and driving some TikTokers to stardom, Savannah.
Oh, yeah, and giving people record contracts and all that kind of stuff because they're discovered on the app. It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, Silvana, thank you so much.
You got it.
Okay, so I feel like you're either a physical book person or an e-book, Kindle type of person. I'm a physical book person, but it turns out a lot of people are checking out digital copies of books from their public libraries. Get this, last year alone, more than 730 million ebooks were checked out across apps and libraries. But listen to this, some librarians say it's getting hard for their budgets to keep up with the digital demand. So many libraries have these agreements to buy print books for less than the market price, but it actually costs much more to license ebooks, and they can come with a lot of restrictions. Publishers and authors argue those high prices and those restrictions are necessary for their bottom line. The debate is now turning, though, into a legal battle in some states like Connecticut. Eric Ofgang is the author of this New York Times article, Libraries Pay More for Ebooks. Some states want to change that, and he joins me now. Eric, good morning. So this is an interesting one, just because I think maybe it's sort of surprising that a digital ebook would cost more in some way, or maybe people don't even know that you can check them out. So let's talk about that digital ecosystem at public libraries. What is different about the process of lending out an ebook versus a print book? Like, I think it makes sense to a lot of people. The print book, obviously, like, here you go, this is your copy until you return it, versus an ebook that almost seems like unlimited in some way. So what does this look like?
Yeah, it is surprising in a lot of ways, because I think inherently we think it would be easier and less expensive to borrow an ebook, either an audiobook or a digital version of a book. And it's actually much more expensive for libraries. And that's because they have to treat them like they would a physical book. So they can generally only lend out one at a time. And the publishers charge libraries more than they would you or I, a regular consumer. They charge them, sometimes as much as 10 times what they would a traditional print book. And the reason is because they say the process is very different. If you want to borrow a book from a library, the physical book, you have to make time to go down there and check that book out. Whereas those of us who use ebooks, it might be late at night, you're having trouble falling asleep, you want to check out a book. You can do it very quickly.
Okay, so now let's talk about this legal aspect. Connecticut, it's the first state to pass a law that's going to require publishers to negotiate with libraries over ebooks. What's in this law exactly? And explain, the precedent for any type of negotiation like there is with print books.
Yeah, so basically the idea is right now, a lot of books, for instance, I wrote about in the story Fahrenheit 451. It costs libraries $52 to buy that book, that ebook, versus something like 10 for a print book, and it expires after 2 years. So after 2 years, whether someone takes it out or not, they have to buy the book again. And this is really expensive for libraries. And some books they can only they have to buy the ebook after it's been taken out 6 or 7 times, or the contracts vary by book, but they tend to be pretty expensive for libraries. And so now the law in Connecticut, librarians have basically said that it's going to make it illegal for libraries to purchase books that are that have a contract that is either term limited, so it expires after a certain amount of time, and expires after a certain amount of checkouts. And there's some other things that'll make it illegal for libraries to buy. Basically, the idea is that it'll make it so that libraries won't be able to agree to these ebook prices, and will have to bring the publishers to the bargaining table. That is the hope.
What does this mean for authors?
Yeah, so authors, it's a strange issue, because authors and librarians usually, are in lockstep, but on this issue, they're often separate. The Authors Guild is very opposed to these. They say that ebooks are different inherently than print books because they're so much easier to borrow, and that it really can cut into the sales for authors if people are just going to go on and borrow ebooks. Librarians don't agree with that claim, but that is a debate.
All right, Eric Ofgang, interesting stuff. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, a love story powerful enough to cross the ocean, literally. Up next, the message in a bottle found 13 years after it was written. You're watching Morning News Now. Welcome back. Let's end the hour with a message in a bottle found more than a decade after it was written. NBC Nightly News anchor Tom Yamas has the story of the couple who wrote the note and the love story that followed.
John and Kate Gay were walking along their local beach on the west coast of Ireland with their dog when they found a wine bottle.
Kate went and picked it up, and then I said, well, there's a message in there.
The bottle, still in good condition, the paper inside, damp, but with this message. Anita and Brad's day trip to Belle Island. Today, we enjoyed dinner, this bottle of wine, and each other on the edge of the island. If you find this, please call us. The date was September 14th. 2012.
What's so lovely is it's such a happy story. The bottle captured a happy moment, and it's arrived on our shores after going through so many storms and challenges along the way.
At first, no one answered the number from that message in the bottle, so they put a call out on Facebook. Within hours, they managed to find the Anita and Brad.
We just didn't think anyone was going to find it. Thought, let's put my parents' landline on it. And that's what they were trying to reach out to.
The Canadian couple were on a date when they got the idea.
We found a little piece of paper in the car and just scribbled a note that we thought would be, just like a private little special moment for us. And we put it in the bottle and sealed it up very tightly. And Brad threw it, just threw it into the ocean.
Never did they imagine that it would cross the Atlantic, thousands of miles away. They would go on to marry and raise 3 children. 13 years later, still very much in love.
Oh, we have a family.
Beautiful family and a nice life. And
we're still in love.
Like each other.
Tom Yamas, NBC News.
That is just incredible. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us as the news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this Thursday. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe's off today. Right now on Morning News Now, Mother Nature's wrath wreaking havoc on millions of Americans across the country this morning. From tornadoes in the Midwest to extreme heat here in the Northeast. Our Angie Lastman is covering it all as you start your Thursday. Also this morning, the widening Republican rift over President Trump's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case. The MAGA mainstays now breaking with the commander-in-chief as he attacks some supporters and tells them to move on. Plus, we might still be in the middle of summer, but back-to-school shopping is already kicking into high gear. So where can parents lock in those lower prices on classroom essentials before it's too late? We are watching your wallet. And later in the hour, the so-called Gen Z stare is the viral TikTok trend that's serving up some generational beef between millennials and Gen Z. We will explain what all that means. We're going to begin this hour, though, with the extreme weather that's impacting just about every corner of the country. Now, cleanup is underway in the Midwest after multiple massive tornadoes tore across southern Wisconsin yesterday. And then here in the Northeast, we are bracing for another scorcher, but that is just days after those torrential downpours. The Southeast is also dealing with unrelenting heat. And all this comes as people in cities like New Orleans are packing their sandbags and cleaning out the storm drains as a tropical disturbance threatens to trigger flash flooding along the Gulf Coast. NBC News correspondent George Solis, he is there in New Orleans. He's tracking it all for us. A lot going on. George, good morning.
Yeah, Savannah, good morning. Residents here in New Orleans and surrounding regions on high alert as this storm system moves in, bringing in some of that tropical moisture, meaning intense rainfall and the potential for flooding. We're talking about 10 inches, some flood watches in effect. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, some tragedy to report as one person was killed and at least a dozen others were injured by a lightning strike. Overnight, as the summer storms rage on, more reminders of the severe weather danger. A group struck by lightning at an outdoor archery range in New Jersey.
What's going on there?
I believe a whole bunch of us were just struck by lightning.
The lightning hitting more than a dozen people, including children from a local Cub Scout troop. The youngest, just 7 years old. Authorities say a 61-year-old man lost his life.
It did not rain. There was no thunder. There was nothing. It was just like the finger of God came down and pow. And that was it. And people were laying on the ground.
Authorities warning residents to stay inside during severe thunderstorms. And it's not the only severe weather warning. In the Midwest, sirens blaring.
Uh-oh. Okay, we got a tornado.
As multiple tornadoes touch down across Wisconsin.
I got a tornado right in front of me.
Massive funnel clouds forming over homes and roads.
That's insane. Wow! Holy moly!
Drone footage showing a twister ripping through, and Americans preparing for more wild weather. More than 70 million under heat alerts today. Sweltering temps expected in parts of the Northeast and South, which saw bands of thunderstorms. Rainwater falling into the cabin of a grounded Delta flight in Miami. Here in southern Louisiana, residents are bracing for rain, supposed to dump more than 10 inches of rain in some areas, getting ready for what could be a serious multi-day flood event.
And I just want to try and be ready. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, Savannah, as I'm looking here at the distance, some of those clouds are starting to move in as a precaution. City offices here in New Orleans are closed today. And here's a fact. Next month marks 20 years since Hurricane Katrina made landfall here in Louisiana. So residents that we spoke with say they take every storm system, including this one, very seriously. Savannah?
All right, George, thank you so much. Well, meanwhile, it's hot and humid across the southeast today, so let's get a check on your morning news now weather. Angie Lastman's here in studio with your forecast. Hey, Angie.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning to you. We, of course, have summer in full swing across much of the east, and we've got a whole lot of heat alerts out there right now. The northeast included in that, as well as parts of the south stretching up into the Tennessee Valley. 71 million people right now under heat alerts. It does include New York, Washington, D.C., Norfolk, and these locations extending up into Boston are going to see, once again, temperatures well above 90 and feeling like the triple digits in some spots. You can see where we land today in Washington, D.C., 97 degrees, low 90s for Boston, mid 90s for Jackson and Nashville. You look just back to the west, though, and this cold front that is sparking up some showers and thunderstorms and potential flooding is bringing us a little relief behind it. That's all settled in for parts of the Midwest. Notice the mid 70s in Minneapolis. We're running cooler than normal in Chicago with just a high of 73 degrees today. If you're looking for some of that milder air in parts of the Northeast, you're going to get it, especially the interior areas tomorrow. Notice Binghamton down to the low 70s. Detroit, you'll be in the 70s. Minneapolis will keep that streak going. But the Southeast, not so much. We keep those 90s on tap from Fort Worth all the way to Wilmington. And again, the humidity levels will be up, so it'll be feeling warmer than that as well. Heading into the weekend and into early next week, it's pretty typical for mid-July. We're going to see kind of some mixed highs out there, but up into New England, temperatures in the 80s. We've got a couple of high 80s to low 90s out there for the mid-Atlantic, and then we keep the 90s going for Memphis as well. On top of that, of course, we are tracking this tropical disturbance that we've been watching over the past couple of days. It reemerged into parts of the Gulf of Mexico, or Gulf of America, rather, and we are looking at some heavy rain across parts of the central Gulf Coast here for the next couple of days. This is going to be something that you see not just today, but into tomorrow and potentially Saturday, where we pick up ample amounts of rain. As you look at those, the timeline of this through Thursday and even into Friday, you can see some of the heaviest of the rain kind of displaced off to the west side of the center of that system. And that means that anywhere from Louisiana stretching out to parts of the Florida Panhandle could see some of the heaviest of the rain, really intense hourly rainfall rates. So we, of course, are concerned about the potential for flash flooding. When we look all the way through Saturday, some double-digit rainfall amounts are expected. So we've got 10 to 15 inches in localized amounts. I think close to the coast is where you'll see those higher amounts. And again, just to the west of that center is where we're seeing really the impressive rainfall. So watching for the flood concerns across that region as we get through at least Saturday. Notice the big picture look for looking ahead to the weekend. Less humid conditions as expected across the Northeast. We'll see a whole lot of sunshine for the West. We've really got a great kind of Friday on tap for folks there. There's the rain that's still in the picture from the Gulf Coast stretching up into the Tennessee and Ohio Valley, and a little bit of that rain across parts of the upper Midwest as well. We head into Saturday, some of that rain centered from the Great Lakes and out into parts of the east here as we get into Sunday, Savannah.
All right, Angie, thank you so much. Well, as millions of Americans continue to deal with devastating flood damage or the threat of one that could happen, we're taking a closer look at what you can do to help protect your home and your family as these extreme weather events become more common. NBC News Chief Consumer Investigative Correspondent Vicki Nguyen is here with steps that you could take right now so you are ready before the next storm. I think so many people have this on their mind, Vicki. I'm so happy you did this. Good morning.
Yeah, it's a really top of mind issue, important to discuss, important to be ready. Good morning to you. Most of us do not have flood insurance, but as we're seeing with these latest storms, severe weather can strike quickly, and it can leave behind tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage to your home. So this morning, we have expert advice to help you prepare and also tell you what to do in the aftermath of a storm.
It can happen in seconds. Just 1 inch of floodwater can cause immense and costly damage.
The floods came fast. It was dramatic, from no real warning to a huge influx of water.
Massive storms turned Lisa Spurn's New Jersey neighborhood into a marshy mess, even crippling her recently installed drain system.
When the water started coming in, it seeped into the hallway, then it seeped into our playroom, and then before I knew it, it was in the basement.
Do you have any idea at this point how much it's going to cost you to fix all the damage?
It'll be, at best estimate, tens of thousands of dollars.
To best protect yourself, water remediation expert Nelson Rivera says first, keep gutters and drains free of debris. Next, invest in water alarms like this. They alert you the instant water seeps onto the floor and cost just $15.
Put them next to your hot water heater, put them throughout your basement, throughout any area where you might get water intrusion into your home. Once the water makes contact with that alarm, it rings off and it alerts you so you can come and intervene quickly and try to minimize whatever damage may occur.
During a rainstorm, he says place sump pumps in your basement to help evacuate any water. Make sure your valuables are stored high, up off the floor. And before entering a flooded space, always put on rubber gloves and boots. They can help protect you from getting electrocuted.
I don't think a lot of people know that there is a potential for electrocution when a space gets flooded. Why is that?
So even the smallest puddle in your home could be electrified. If you have a wire or electrical cord that's running through that puddle, you come in contact with that puddle, now you're putting yourself in danger.
Rivera says try to get water off your floors as quickly as possible using towels or wet vacs. And always hire a licensed water remediation company. They have special equipment to inspect your home for hidden damage, like moisture trapped inside your walls.
Is this the perfect breeding ground for mold?
This is mold's perfect environment.
Another good tip, in flood-prone rooms, replace carpet with water-resistant ceramic tile.
Just stops everything up. So
That's what Lisa plans to do.
It's time and money, but thank God everyone was safe and it could have been a lot worse.
All right, Vicki, so many people, again, like we just mentioned, probably thinking about this and wondering, should I go ahead and splurge on flood insurance? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's super important for people to know that it can be expensive, but it can be worthwhile. As you saw with Lisa there, she's not even in an area that's considered a flood zone, and yet she's had 3 floods in the past 20 years. So a couple of options. You can either go with your private insurance, start with your homeowner's insurance and ask them how much would a flood policy cost to add on each year. Also, FEMA has a program, the National Flood Insurance Program, that is supposed to ensure affordable access to a policy. The thing is, you do want to compare, you want to shop around, and make sure you ask a lot of questions about what exactly is covered.
Oh, so true, because in your home insurance, by the way, flood is not normally.
No, it is not normally covered. Neither is earthquake. Those are separate policies.
Wow. All right, Vicki, thank you so much. Well, now to Washington, where President Trump is slamming some of his own supporters who are calling for this release of files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The president's latest comments highlight a growing rift within the Republican Party. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us with more details on this one. Certainly a talker. Gabe, good morning.
Hey there, Savannah. Good morning. It is a rare rebuke from the president, taking on some of his own allies. Now, Epstein died by suicide in prison in 2019, and last week the Justice Department tried to put to bed those conspiracy theories that he was murdered because of an incriminating client list. Well, the president is now trying to label the uproar a Democrat-led hoax, although he and his own supporters originally fanned the flames. This morning, growing Republican backlash.
The Epstein files need to be released.
President Trump lashing out at some of his own supporters over their demands for more information about the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net.
The president on social media also arguing his, quote, past supporters have bought into this BS hook, line, and sinker, calling them weaklings, prompting rare defiance from some allies in the MAGA movement.
If you talk about this, I'm going to excommunicate you. Well, you're not the Pope, bro.
The controversy even getting pop culture attention, prompting a joke from comedian Shane Gillis at the ESPY Awards.
Actually, there was supposed to be an Epstein joke here, but as it got deleted.
Influential podcaster Charlie Kirk, a Trump supporter, trying to reassure the MAGA ranks.
Don't get too fired up about the Truth Social and President Trump ranting and venting about this.
And pleading with Trump.
Mr. President, the emphasis on Epstein is truly the best intentions of your most loyal followers.
But in another interview yesterday, Trump again criticizing those speaking out.
It's a disgrace, and I remember every one of these guys. They're my supporters.
The split between the president and some in his base appears to be, at least partially, of his own making, after he and his allies suggested during the 2024 campaign that they were in favor of more Epstein disclosures.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would.
We need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
The president still says he's standing by his Attorney General, Pam Bondi.
She says, I gave you all the credible information. And if she finds any more credible information, she'll give that too. What more can she do than that?
Possibly adding fuel to the fire. 4 sources familiar with the matter tell NBC News the Justice Department has fired federal prosecutor Maureen Comey, the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey. She played a role in the investigations of Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, and also prosecuted Sean Diddy Combs in his sex trafficking trial. It is not clear why she was fired. Savannah.
All right, Gabe, thank you very much. Well, there are new summer safety concerns over shark attacks. Beach communities are beefing up shark patrols after a flurry of sightings up and down the East Coast. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch is in South Florida this morning, and he joins us with the latest. Hey, Jesse, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. The summer's in full swing. People are at the beaches, and as you mentioned, we are seeing these sightings up and down the East Coast. There's even been some temporary beach shutdowns in Hawaii, and now one New York town is increasingly concerned about the potential danger, and so they are surging resources to what they call shark patrol.
This morning, new warnings as Americans flock to beaches in the peak of summer.
We have had more sightings in 2 years than the previous 10.
Now officials in Hempstead, New York say as shark sightings spike, more safety patrols are needed.
I submitted for a grant to increase the amount of jet skis, lifeguards, as well as drones.
The new tools and measures announced on the heels of a 9-foot shark being spotted just offshore.
Cool, let's see if we can see the shark.
Officials say cleaner water is bringing in more bait fish, who attract more sharks.
Cedar Beach, great white sharks. It's getting real out here, people.
On Wednesday in Harpswell, Maine, shark flags were raised alerting swimmers after confirmed sightings of a great white. Just days earlier, a National Geographic photographer caught this toothy grin. And on Cape Cod, shark alerts are soaring. A shark biologist warning on social media, it's a busy afternoon. And while sightings are up, shark attacks are rare. The United States had 28 unprovoked shark attacks last year, half of them reported in Florida.
More people are being more alert. We're having increased sightings because there are more eyes on the water.
Marianne Walsh with the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy says while Cape Cod sightings are up, the actual number of sharks is consistent.
All this extra shark talk that's going on right now, warranted or not?
This is a special year. It's the 50th anniversary of Jaws, so I think that's what kicked off the conversation around shark activity. We do have shark activity starting to pick up, which according to our research efforts and the historical data that we have, we are right on track with that.
And with sharks from the big screen to reality top of mind, back in Hempstead, authorities hoping their visitors won't need to flee the waters.
When you come to the town beach, the greatest thing we want you to worry about is getting a sunburn.
And so, Savannah, here's something to keep in mind when you're going to the beach. Look to the lifeguard stand, see what kind of flags they might have overhead. There are a couple different ones that might give an indication about potential shark activity. A yellow flag can mean that there are bait fish in the area. Remember, those attract sharks. Then there's the purple flag that can refer to hazardous marine life. That could be jellyfish or stingrays or sharks. And then there's the double red flag. If you see 2 red flags stacked together, that means no swimming allowed. The waters are closed and sharks could be the reason there. But all of these are maybes at each beach. So when you get to a beach for the first time, you should find out what the lifeguards would use to signal you in case of any kind of emergencies, because these signals are not necessarily universal. They can mean different things in each community. Just another reminder, as an expert said to us, beaches are wild environments. You are stepping into a wild environment when you go there. But obviously, we still want everyone to be able to have fun this summer. Back to you.
Absolutely. Really good advice and tips there. Get the information, know what the warning signs are. Jesse, thank you so much. Well, we are learning more details this morning about a big change that could be coming to airport security checkpoints. After we just heard one last week, right, about shoes. Well, now this one involves liquids and gels. It was just last week when the TSA announced it would no longer require passengers to take those shoes off while going through security. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the details.
Yeah, good day. When Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem took office, she said she immediately began looking at the TSA requirements, regulations, procedures, passenger screening, asking whether they were still appropriate. And now, after having removed the requirement for passengers to take off their shoes for screenings, now she says she's considering the same with liquids and gels. Here's the secretary.
liquids, I'm questioning, so that may be the next big announcement, is what size your liquids need to be. We have put in place in TSA a multi-layered screening process that allows us to change some of how we do security and screening, so it still is safe.
So any change to TSA procedures could be months away, potentially even years away. TSA and Homeland Security say that they are partnering with companies to test the technology that would screen potentially for liquids and gels. A reminder, the 311 rule remains in effect at checkpoints. You cannot carry more than 3.4 ounces in a single plastic bag when you go through the checkpoint. Anything more than that must be thrown out or must be checked. Now, I got to tell you, a lot, in fact, most security pros I talk to, including former top Homeland Security experts, are very worried that the TSA is pulling back security requirements. They make the point that, first of all, we have major events next year. We have the World Cup. We have the America 250 celebrations. In addition, this year alone, we have already had U.S. action in the Middle East, in Iran, in Yemen, supplying weapons to the Israeli military and Gaza. The FBI has already warned of potential terror cells, sleeper cells in the United States. The liquid explosives rule came about after somebody tried to blow up a plane with liquid explosives. And the shoe requirement came into place after a shoe bomb attempt. There is currently no technology at airport security checkpoints to screen for explosive liquids or shoe bombs. So the concern is that the United States is pulling back on the very security requirements at checkpoints that have kept this country safe for so long. Bottom line is this is still a work in progress, no imminent decision, we're told, from Homeland Security, at least not yet. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you so much. There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including some exclusive NBC News reporting that's now revealing the limited impact of America's strikes on Iranian nuclear sites last month. First, though, after the break, this is an alarming security breach here. It was at the National Guard. Defense officials are blaming Beijing for a hacking campaign that lasted nearly a year. That is next. Welcome back. Officials are on edge this morning after the U.S. Defense Department discovered an alarming security breach at one branch of the military. The department found that an elite Chinese cyber group, they've got a nickname, it's called Salt Typhoon. It hacked into at least one state's National Guard network for nearly a year. And it believes the hackers may have obtained sensitive military or law enforcement information. NBC News Digital reporter Kevin Collier joins us now to explain what happened here. He covers cybersecurity, privacy, technology policy for us. Kevin, good morning. So this was revealed in this Department of Homeland Security memo back in June, but there's still a lot we don't know. Like, for example, which state's National Guard was actually hacked. What does this mean for National Guard networks and more broadly, just American cybersecurity?
I mean, at minimum, these hackers were able to access physical maps, service members' personal information, descriptions of how the computer networks are set up. You know, crucially, these are top-tier Chinese intelligence hackers, and the National Guard is set up at this intersection of the U.S. military and individual states, law enforcement. So the memo we found that at least as of last month, officials were still working to determine how the hackers might have pivoted to other states' Guard networks, state government networks, law enforcement networks. The Guard told me they're still assessing the impact here.
How are Washington and Beijing responding to these details in this memo?
Beijing kind of gave us a denial, as they generally do with cyber operations. Washington is generally on its back foot with this stuff. You have to remember that the Trump administration has fired a whole host of cyber personnel in its first few months. And this campaign was able to sit presumably undetected for 9 months from March to December last year.
Kevin, this isn't the first time I understand that this particular group had hacked major U.S. infrastructure. Tell us about that happening before and the fact that it has been able to happen multiple times. What does that mean we need to do to make ourselves more secure?
Yeah, I mean, most notably, this is the same group that was behind what was probably the largest cyber espionage operation against the United States infrastructure in history. This last year, they hacked most major U.S. telecom companies, which is kind of hard to get your head around, but it included AT&T, Verizon. They accessed the calls, text messages, and voicemails of top U.S. officials. It was the Trump campaign, J.D. Vance, the Harris campaign, then Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's office. They did all of that. Those are the ones we know about. Hardening U.S. cybersecurity is an extraordinarily complicated problem. It does not look like we are positioned to make serious strides in the immediate future.
All right, Kevin, fascinating reporting. Thank you so much. We now have some exclusive reporting from NBC News to bring you this morning. A new U.S. assessment has found that last month's American strikes on Iran only destroyed one of 3 nuclear sites. And then the other 2, they were not as badly damaged, and they may have been downgraded to just a point where nuclear enrichment could resume in the next several months. That's according to 5 current and former U.S. officials familiar with this assessment. Well, additionally, a current U.S. official and 2 former U.S. officials told NBC News that U.S. Central Command had developed a much more comprehensive plan to strike Iran, but that President Trump rejected it. It would have lasted weeks and involved hitting 3 additional sites. Responding to our reporting, a spokesperson at the Pentagon said Iran's nuclear facilities at the 3 sites were, quote, completely obliterated. Well, now let's turn to developing news. This is out of eastern Iraq. Officials there say dozens of people have been killed after a fire tore through a shopping mall. NBC News international correspondent Claudia Lavanga joins us with that and other world news in 60 seconds. Claudia, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Well, that's right. At least according to Reuters, at least 69 people have now been killed and another 11 are missing after a massive fire engulfed a hypermarket in Iraq. Now, videos posted on social media show firefighters trying to contain the massive blaze in the city of Al-Qut. An investigation on the cause of the fire has been opened. Now to the tiny African kingdom of Eswatini. The Trump administration deported 5 immigrants from Vietnam, Jamaica, Laos, Yemen and Cuba to the southern African country after officials say they committed serious crimes in the U.S. But now Eswatini officials say they are planning to repatriate them, pushing back on what is reportedly considered the first, quote, third country deportation. And let's end this tour of the world in Belgium now, where on Wednesday, organizers of the Tomorrowland Music Festival said a fire severely damaged the main stage. The major electronic dance music festival opened its doors to thousands of visitors from around the world today. Organizers say no one was injured in the fire, and they're trying to find a solution to allow major stars like David Guetta and Swedish House Mafia to play. Back to you, Savannah.
All right, Claudia, thank you. Well, coming up, clearing the air, the former first couple, Barack and Michelle Obama, speaking out about rumors that their decades-long marriage is on the rocks. We've got more on that next. Back now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning. We're going to start with the passage of a key package in the Senate to cut billions in funding. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin is here with more. Hey, Julie.
Hey, Savannah. Good morning. We begin here on Capitol Hill, where Senate Republicans, as you mentioned, narrowly passed a $9 billion rescissions package, a pretty rare move for the Senate since they voted to give back funding they already passed into law because the Trump administration asked them to. The cuts impact foreign aid and public broadcasting here at home. 2 issues Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, both Republicans, just couldn't get past. Plus, the idea of giving the executive branch even more power didn't sit right with them. The package, Savannah, now heads to the House for a vote where they have to pass it by tomorrow. And staying in Washington, Jerome Powell's job might be safe, at least for the moment, because President Trump yesterday said it was, quote, highly unlikely that he would fire the Federal Reserve chair. But that doesn't mean he's happy with the job Powell is doing. Trump has long criticized the man he himself appointed to the top post of the Fed, calling on Powell repeatedly for months to cut interest rates. The president even asked a group of lawmakers earlier this week whether he should fire Powell, but even Speaker Johnson said it isn't clear what authority Trump has to do it. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we had a major softball game here in D.C. last night. Unfortunately, the press team, a.k.a. the Bad News Babes, coached by our very own Ryan Nobles and Frank Thorpe, lost to Team Congress. The score was 5-3. But the game did end early because of lightning and storms. But no matter what, the real winners are the young women battling breast cancer, who will hopefully benefit from the money raised by this annual tradition. Since the games began back in 2009, more than $4 million has been donated to the Young Survival Coalition. And that is a look at what is making news in politics
Julie,
this morning.
did you play?
Savannah? No one wants to see that.
I was like looking for you in the footage.
No, not for me. But I supported my teammates. I guess that all.
You know, it wouldn't be for me either. So I totally understand. There's no chance I would have done that either. All right, Julie, thank you. Well, 80 years after the U.S. tested a nuclear bomb in a New Mexico desert, nearby communities are still dealing with the aftermath. The U.S. government carried out what was called the Trinity test without warning the tens of thousands of people who lived within 50 miles of the blast site. Well, now the victims are finally getting help. NBC News national correspondent Aaron Gilchrist reports.
A community catharsis in the middle of the New Mexico desert.
This is the first time we've ever had any kind of acknowledgement of our sacrifice and suffering as a result of being overexposed to radiation.
Finally righting a wrong 80 years after the world changed.
Army cameras 6 miles away recorded the historic moment in the black of night.
13 pounds of weapons-grade plutonium detonated in the barren New Mexico desert, the first time that a nuclear bomb was ever tested. Wes Burris witnessed the Trinity test at just 5 years old.
When that went off, it blew that window back against the wall and broke the glass out of the window. I can remember it was just bright, you know. You couldn't look at it. Yeah. And I asked him, I said, Dad, what happened? Did the sun blow up? And that's the window I jumped up and looked at. So did you see the cloud? Oh, yeah, I could see the cloud. Later, you could see it for a long time.
The federal government initially said the 38,000-foot-high mushroom cloud was caused by ammo and pyrotechnics that had accidentally blown up.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Over time, the nuclear fallout impacted the water, crops, livestock, and people all across New Mexico's Tularosa Basin. Cancers and other major health issues plagued generations of families here.
A brother had thyroid cancer. Mother died of colon cancer.
My mom died of bone cancer.
3 bouts of thyroid cancer, colon cancer,
stomach cancer.
I'm hoping and praying my youngest one doesn't get it.
Downwinders, as they call themselves, fell ill and even died, never getting official recognition from the state or federal government for all they endured. Until now.
We remember the mothers and fathers, the children who never grew.
A permanent symbol, the state installing this marker near the Trinity site, finally acknowledging decades of sacrifice and suffering for families like Tina Cordovas.
We bear the legacy of that bomb in our bodies. In my family, I'm the 4th generation to have cancer since 1945. This is the hidden history, the hidden tragedy of the Trinity bomb.
This site, long a tourist destination, the Army and National Park Service started opening it to history and science lovers in the 1950s.
Detonator charge.
And the site is featured in the Oscar-winning film Oppenheimer as the climax of the Manhattan Project. But neither truly expanded on the suffering of the downwinders.
We became the collateral damage.
Cordova spent years fighting for recognition and compensation for her community, taking their stories all the way to Capitol Hill. Now Washington is responding to their cries for help, too.
It wasn't until July 3rd of this year that they finally were able to include an expansion to the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act to include the people of New Mexico 80 years later.
That expansion happening as part of President Trump's new tax and spending law. But downwinders still face the harsh reality of health challenges and an uncertain future.
We're not done fighting, and the future probably looks very similar to what we've been doing in the past, which is continuing to raise our voices for justice.
Justice 80 years in the making for those who survived the dawn of the atomic age and those who didn't. Aaron Gilchrist, NBC News.
Thanks to Aaron for that report. Well, the former first couple, Barack and Michelle Obama, are speaking out addressing rumors about their marriage. This was on Michelle's podcast. They denied their marriage was ever in trouble. NBC News correspondent Kaylee Hartung has more.
Welcome to IMO. Look at you.
In a lighthearted yet direct discussion.
It's my husband, y'all.
She took me back. It was touch and go for a while.
Barack and Michelle Obama addressing divorce rumors swirling around the former first couple for months.
There hasn't been one moment in our marriage where I thought about quitting my man.
Okay, don't make me cry now.
Sitting down on the latest episode of the former First Lady's IMO podcast, which she co-hosts with her brother.
It's so nice to have you both in the same room together.
I know, because when we aren't, folks think we're divorced.
I don't even know this stuff's going on.
Right.
And then somebody will mention it to me, and I'm all like, what are you talking about?
Divorce headlines first began bubbling around the time Mrs. Obama was MIA for high-profile events, like former President Jimmy Carter's funeral and President Donald Trump's second inauguration. She later slammed public speculation about her marriage.
They couldn't even fathom that I was making a choice for myself, that they had to assume that my husband and I are divorcing.
In their 32 years of marriage, the Obamas have been open about past challenges.
There were 10 years when I couldn't stand my husband. And guess when it happened? When those kids were little.
Earlier this year, the former president said he was working on his own work-life balance.
I was in a deep deficit with my wife, so I have been trying to dig myself out of that hole by doing occasionally fun things.
But the pair has also proudly and publicly shown their love, including during then-President Obama's farewell address.
For the past 25 years, you have not only been my wife and mother of my children, you have been my best friend.
In recent social media posts, the Obamas sharing private moments and this loving Father's Day message. Mrs. Obama writing her husband has always been there for us, no matter what, even when it felt like the weight of the world was on his shoulders.
All right, our thanks to Kaylee for that report. Coming up, playing it safe online. When Morning News Now returns, the new safety features being introduced on one of the world's biggest platforms with America's teen gamers in mind. That is next. Stick around. Welcome back. We now have a topic we want to discuss that we talk about a lot on this show, and it's digital safety for kids online. According to the Pew Research Center, virtually all teenagers in the U.S. now report using the internet every day. Maybe not a surprise, but take a look at this. Roughly half of them say they are online, quote, almost constantly. So with all that time spent online, of course, safety becomes even more important, with concerns that young people's mental health is suffering or that they could be targeted by bad actors. Always a concern for parents. Well, today we're going to talk to the man who runs one of the world's most visited gaming destinations. Roblox has nearly 98 million daily users. They notch up billions of hours of engagement, playing millions of different games. In November, it announced new safety features for users under 13 years old. And now today, the platform is introducing this expanded suite of features for its teenage users, those who are 13 to 18. Well, the co-founder and CEO of Roblox, Dave Baszucki, joins us now. Dave, good morning. Thanks so much for being here. So first, if you just could, for parents or people maybe who are not parents, who don't really know a lot about Roblox or how it works, the fact that you can create games in addition to joining games, and there's a lot of flexibility here. Just explain a little bit, if you could quickly, about how Roblox works, what users come to your platform for.
Hey, thanks for having us on the program. Every day, almost 100 million daily active users come to our platform to play, to communicate, to hang out. And everything they're doing is happening in creations made by the community. We have hobbyist creators, we have kids getting interested in STEM, and more we have large studios on the platform. It's part of what we've shared as our vision of really having over 10% of the gaming market running on Roblox. And today's a big day in that we've been innovating on safety and civility for almost 20 years, and we're introducing the notion of age-based communication, and really glad to be here to share more about it with you.
Yeah, so let's talk now about these new features. Age-based communication, sort of meaning that that's always a concern, right? When I mentioned bad actors a second ago, that's a lot of times how bad things happen, right? Is people who are maybe much older than your child or who are not who they say they are able to communicate with children. What will these new features mean? Explain trusted connections, what that looks like, and also how parents are able to get information about who their kids are communicating with and what they're saying.
Yeah, our vision really is to go way beyond government or legislation, and also go beyond an area that most social platforms aren't delving into, and that's this vulnerable teenage of 13 through 17. We're introducing 4 pieces of functionality that work together. The first is trusted connections, so allowing teens to connect with people they really know and trust, typically in the real world, and making that possible through age estimations. So the combination of these two things together, we're allowing them to speak a little more freely when you have a trusted connection, and we estimate your age to make sure you're ready to do that. What's really important about this is we're constantly trying to keep people on the Roblox platform, not as much for growth or because we want more engagement, because our platform is very safe and we don't allow image sharing. We don't allow a lot of the other things that happen on other platforms, like unfiltered communication or communication that's not monitored for critical harms. In addition, we're introducing a bunch of new ways that teens, for example, can watch their notifications, things that just basically help them monitor their account or who they're hanging out with, or even screen time for teens. And finally, we're allowing teens who connect with their parents to bring their parents into the fold and have their parents also watch spending or who their connections are.
I want to ask you about that age confirmation, because this is some new technology that you're rolling out, kind of a new added step, because that's where so much of the criticism comes, whether it be gaming, whether it be social media, is that if kids are able to just say, hey, I'm not actually 13, then they're totally exempt from any of these protections. But you guys are trying to confirm that if somebody is in fact under the age of 18, that they're put into these. How are you doing that?
We believe the future of unfiltered communication between teens in private is going to be based on age estimation and trusted connections. So AI has been a driving force of our company in safety and civility for over 4 years. We have over 200 AI models running for our moderation, for our voice systems and all of that. We're using AI along with a very quick selfie to estimate age. And we're only going to allow trusted connections and free communication for those who we estimate to be over 13. We're not waiting for example, device manufacturers to give an age. It's something we've decided we have to do, and we think this will be the new standard for safety and civility for teens.
Can you tell me maybe what you would say to a parent who's concerned about the content that they see? I mean, I have done some reporting in my past, like I said, because you can create games about that sort of being abused, and almost even at the time I was reporting on strip club-like environments within a video game that I know some parents were super surprised to see was even a possibility with their kids being able to see. How would you reassure parents that the content that their kids are seeing is age appropriate?
Yeah, so in addition to all of the things we're introducing today about communication safety, content safety is also first and foremost on our platform. We've innovated with experience guidelines, with a very concise policy for all ages. We have zero tolerance on Roblox for any content that is not age appropriate. We've introduced the notion of 17 and up content for certain types of content. And once again, we, with the introduction of AI over the last 4 years, just continuously get better and better and better and faster at just making sure 100% of the content on our platform is age appropriate. We have no tolerance for people who try to get around our guidelines.
Dave Baszucki, thank you very much for joining us this morning to talk about these brand new features. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's stay on some business headlines. Walmart is reportedly shaken up its aisles, so to speak, with some new structural changes. CNBC's Silvana Henao has that and other money news. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. Yes, so Walmart is restructuring some support and training roles in its stores. That's according to a memo seen by Reuters. And Bloomberg first reported hundreds of store jobs would be affected. Now, Walmart is eliminating the position of market coordinator and is adjusting some roles in its training academies to train more associates in person. The memo says Walmart plans to offer affected employees other roles as coaches. Large theater chains, including Regal and Cinemark, have held talks about jointly marketing their big screen theaters to compete with IMAX. Bloomberg reports the talks have focused on setting standards for premium large format theaters with options including a new brand name. Now, the chains are motivated by a desire to reduce the growing influence of IMAX, which commands about 10% of box office revenue for blockbusters. And sales of Tesla Cybertruck have dropped sharply from their peak last year, so much so that the larger and more expensive GMC Hummer EV outsold the steel Cybertruck last quarter. The new data from Cox Automotive shows Tesla sold just over 4,300 Cybertrucks versus the 4,500 Hummers GMC sold. Now, both were beat by the Ford F-150 Lightning, which has reclaimed the crown as the best-selling electric truck. But even the Lightning is struggling as Ford recorded its lowest sales total for the vehicle in more than a year, Savannah.
All right, wow. All right, Savannah, thank you. Yeah. It might only be mid-July, but one sign that the end of summer sort of near. Back to school shopping. It is in full swing. According to the National Retail Federation, 2/3 of shoppers had already started buying supplies by early July. This year, families are hoping to lock in lower prices before potential increases later in the summer. Well, the good news here, some of the best deals, they are on the shelves right now. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans joins us now with more on this. Christine, first though, summer is not over.
No, it's not.
Okay,
we are in the middle of summer.
I needed for you to confirm that.
We are in the middle of summer.
What do we know, though, right now about what we think back-to-school spending is going to look like?
Well, what do you think the average parents pay on for each kid? Ballpark. What would you guess?
Oh boy, I'm gonna be a really bad guesser. $50? Wait, does this include clothes and shoes
Everything.
and stuff? Oh, then hundreds.
It's way more. Yeah, $560.
Okay.
$560.
Yeah.
So people are stretched right now, and they're stretching their dollars. So $560 is what they spend. That's why they're spending early, because they're worried about higher prices down the road. So you saw that number from the National Retail Federation. 67% of people have already started shopping. That's way more than last year. And they're trying to beat price hikes. 51% say they're trying to beat price hikes.
That's right. To be clear, when I said 50, I was thinking like notebooks and pens, not like the full outfit thing.
Okay,
so that makes
you got
sense. Are people's concerns about prices going up valid? Do we think that's going to happen?
So we've already seen some prices increase, like backpacks are already a little bit higher. You look at pens and pencils, those prices are higher. Tablets and paper, that's not higher. But these are things that we've been really watching. It's a back to school price creep overall. And we think that maybe later in the fall, you'll start to see prices rising even more. You've got companies with bigger import costs. And so at some point, they're going to be passing that on. But they're not right now. You've seen so many back to school sales already, right? The reason why they're not passing them on quite yet is because they preloaded all of this inventory. With all this uncertainty in the world, they preloaded all this inventory. So you're still seeing pre-trade war kind of prices, I think, in some of these sales.
And I said that some of these deals are available right now. What are stores trying to offer people?
Okay, so you got Walmart saying that it's going to have lower than last year prices on its 14 best-selling items. They're going to have $1, $5, and $10 deals. Target has $5 backpacks, and it says its 20 most popular items will be under $20 together. And look at this. They have a 20% student and teacher discount. Staples has that, too. Please use it. I did that last year when I sent my first kid to college. When you buy all the stuff for a kid going to a dorm room and you get a 20% discount, that really helps. And Amazon has bundles and digital coupons as well. But, we started getting press releases, the beginning of June from these big companies saying, we are not going to raise prices. We are not going to raise prices, because they just really want to make sure that they're getting you in the door. Because surveys show us, Savannah, that people are willing to switch stores and switch brands if they're going to find something cheaper elsewhere.
So what is your advice to parents? Maybe they're kind of more like me. They're like, what? I don't want to think about this yet. It's summer. Is the advice to buy now? What would you say?
I think the advice is to buy now, stay within your budget. Don't overbuy. A lot of personal finance experts, including me, say reuse the stuff that you didn't use last year, the big binders and stuff. You can reuse some of that stuff. My kids always say, but Mom, it's not new. I'm like, in 2 weeks, it's not going to be new anymore anyway. So please use that. And also, there are 19 tax-free holidays in different states. Use those.
Smart.
If you couple a 20% student or teacher discount with a tax-free holiday and whatever kind of bonus and bundle the store is using, you can save some real money.
Wow, that is such good advice. Christine, thank you so
Nice to
much.
see
You too. Coming up, if you couldn't get enough of yesterday's deep dive into the slang of millennials and Gen Z, a.k.a. forever known as the day that Sam Brock said skibidi. Wait until we clue you in on the viral new TikTok trend that's pitting two generations against each other all over a deadpan stare. Stay with us. That's next. We end this hour with the stare that's causing quite a stir online. It looks like this. I think we're going to show you, or I don't know if I'm supposed to be showing you. It's kind of a deadpan expression. There it is. With vacant eyes, even this awkward pause. This trend was started by Gen Z on social media, but where did it come from? Why is it happening? What is this? Here's NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo with a look.
It's the phenomenon rattling millennials.
I just had my first experience with the Gen Z stare.
And putting Gen Z on the defensive.
Most of the time, it's us trying to figure out if you're being for real or not.
A blank expression dubbed the Gen Z stare at the center of the latest generational beef on TikTok.
They just look at you like they just saw a ghost.
So what exactly is it? According to millennial TikTokers, it plays out like this.
Here's my impression. Hey, how are you?
Gen Zers parodied in these online skits.
Are you still using this rack?
In customer service settings.
How is everyone tonight?
And in the workplace.
Can you just show me how to use a printer?
The trope even playing out in shows like The White Lotus.
Hi.
We have the Gen Z stare because most of y'all are just clueless.
TikToker Jet Demetrius Latham, one of many Gen Z content creators, weighing in on the trend.
As a member of Gen Z, could you just start off explaining what the stare is?
Yeah, so the Gen Z stare is kind of like a
deadpan, like blank kind of stare that we give to often like customers when they're asking very like awkward or obvious questions.
With every new video of the Gen Z stare comes a new theory as to why it's happening.
The Gen Z stare is about refusing to perform anything for somebody else.
But a lot of older generations talk too much, too rudely, and too proudly while being too stupid.
All I see is you guys bullying teenagers who are growing up in a much more difficult world than you did.
I don't really feel like it's a lack of social skills. I just think we just don't care.
So are they buffering, protecting their peace, or genuinely anxious about interacting?
I mean, there is an interesting question about how the pandemic might have influenced social interactions. But I had another idea. Maybe somebody popular started this stare, and then other kids in the same age range got it into their feed, and it became a trend due to algorithms.
Do we just generally see shifts in the way people communicate? Is that like a normal thing that happens among these generations?
Absolutely, because generational interactions are based on the time that we're born into. The challenge here is that when you have this dead stare, it comes off as rude and it creates a social awkwardness.
Whether it's a blank gaze or a digital daze, that stare might be here to stay.
Stephen Romo, NBC News.
Well, there was our investigative report on that awkward stare. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.